In this video, I'll be going over a couple of pictures taken during my recent trip to Boston, where I got to witness the Boston Celtics, aka my favorite basketball team, win the championship. I didn't have as much time as I would have liked to take photos, but fortunately I did get some that I liked. So I'll be going over my thought process with those photos, why I composed the photo as such, how I took the photo, and anything else I think could add some insight, such as, the location, the type of situation I was in at the time, and so on. Anyways, let's jump right into it. So with this first photo right here, let me just explain the settings as well as the camera that I used. So with this photo right here, I took it with my Sony a7R5, I took it with my 35mm Zeiss 2.8, and I took it at f8, I took it at 1/1250th of a second, and I took it at ISO 320. So for the location of this picture, you can find it around the government center. If taking the train, you can get off at the government center stop and just walk towards the Quincy Market and you'll find this view. Now for the unfortunate backstory portion of this photo and many others. For more than half the time that I spent in Boston, the weather over there just decided to, just turn up a notch and it was super hot and humid. It almost reminded me of summer in Asia, which if any of you have experienced that before, you know just exactly how crazy that is. If you haven't felt that before, just imagine being in a nice air-conditioned store or your apartment, and then walking outside and immediately starting to sweat with no air, and that's in the shade. It gets worse when you start walking into the sun. Anyways, I can go on and on about how much I despise humid weather. Now to get to the photo and composition. So with this photo, I knew I really wanted to show the buildings and have them be the main subject of the photo. The light at that time of the day made a really cool sort of encapsulation of the buildings, and I wanted to kind of frame them with the surrounding buildings. And I knew I wanted to darken the shadows around the buildings in post, so I intentionally shot this photo with the edit in mind, and this is how it came out, fortunately. Sometimes you can't really shoot with the edit in mind in street photography just because of how fast street photography moves and is. But in this case, I was able to, and that really helped me plan out my composition and what I wanted to do with this picture. It also helped speed up the edit process, as this photo legit took me like 30 seconds to a minute to edit. One thing I wish the surrounding environment in this picture let me do was to somehow center the two buildings in the middle, as I don't really like the emptiness of the left side right here. I could crop in a bit, but I also like how you can see the light ending on the bottom. If I cropped in to center the buildings, I lose that part of the photo. So I guess, it's just something I gotta live with. So moving on to the next photo, we have this photo right here of this man that I took in Chinatown in Boston. Now, again, before I start talking about the photo, let me talk about the settings as well as, the camera that I used. So with this picture, I took it with my a7R5, I took it with my 55mm Zeiss lens, I took it at f7.1, I took it at 1/160th of a second, and I took it at ISO 320. So again, as mentioned before, I took this photo while walking around Boston's Chinatown. There are a bunch of Chinatowns around the world, the one in San Francisco, the one in Yokohama, Japan, and of course, the one that I'm most familiar with, LA's Chinatown. So because of this, I always like to go to Chinatown to see, just how it differs from the LA one. And that led me to, going around and looking at Boston Chinatown. It's a bit smaller than the other ones that I've been to, but that doesn't mean there isn't much to shoot. Actually, due to it being smaller, I actually found that meant that there would be more activity from people in a small place, which meant, more opportunities for photos within a certain area. Though like I mentioned before, because it was so hot during my visit, when I went during high noon, the heat probably led to some people just wanting to stay home. When I went at night for dinner though, it was super lively, so I'll definitely have to go take photos again around the area the next time I go to Boston. Moving on to the actual photo, when walking around the area, I noticed this man right here just resting outside a restaurant, which I'm assuming, he's a worker and he's there on his break. I quickly took this picture and it was perfect to try and isolate my subject and get him with the context of the restaurant behind him. I normally don't like having my subject in the shadows like this, as it gets hard trying to highlight the subject and bring attention to him in the photo, especially at high noon. But because of the way the light was positioned in this area and the light reflecting and bouncing off the surrounding surfaces, acting as, basically a reflector to the shadows, it really put some nice soft light on the subject, making it not too contrasty. I just needed to make sure the bottom portion of this photo right here wasn't too overbearing in terms of, highlights. And in the end, I got this photo, which I'm quite happy with. The last thing I want to mention about this picture is the color grading. I wanted to add a hint of yellow into the picture to sort of signify, the heat and, just to emphasize how hot it was during my time there at that specific moment. It's also nice as well that yellow color grading right there goes really well with the orange background on the walls right here. So moving on to the last photo right here. So again, before I get into the photo, let me just talk about the camera as well as the settings that I use with this photo. So with this photo, I took it with my Ricoh GR3, and I took it at, of course, 28mm because, the camera is a fixed focal length, f5, 1/1000th of a second, and ISO 400. So with this photo right here, I took it at the Boston Harbor, specifically the Long Wharf area on my last day in Boston. Since I had a late flight back to LA, I was just walking around the city with my Ricoh GR3 and just taking snapshots. I hadn't been to Boston Harbor yet at that time, so I decided to just stroll around and see what I can get. Funny enough, my whole time there had been super hot and super humid, but this last day was cloudy and cool for some reason. It even rained when I was about to leave for the airport, so I couldn't have been more confused about the weather in Boston. Getting to this photo, so with cloudy days, I normally like taking black and white photos. Luckily on my Ricoh GR3, I have a black and white recipe on there, so it made it really easy to just put that recipe on and just start snapping away. For this specific picture, I really just wanted to get a picture of the ocean view with the boats in the distance, but there were a couple of people in front of me. I normally like to use foreground in my photos to not only add depth into the photo, but also to add some extra element in terms of the photo's story. Also, at this exact time, there were people on these ski jets right here, and someone in the front of this crowd was pointing at them. I captured the photo at this exact moment, and not only did I get what I had planned on getting, but I also got that extra motion of the person in the front having his finger pointing at the ski jets, and I just thought that was really cool. Anyways, that's all for this video. I hope this was fun and gave you some insight or inspiration for your own photos somehow. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next week. Later.